Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Martine's Musings podcast. I'm your host, Martine Felton, and today we're going to speak with Birgitta Visser. She is an author of a newly released memoir, and she is also a channel. She specializes in consciousness and in channeling galactic beings and other ascended masters. Yeah, welcome, Brigitte.
Thank you for having me, Martine. It's good to be on your show.
Yes, I'm really excited to talk to you about, spirituality and your book and how you channel and how you use that to help others and light language and all that good stuff. So give me a little bit of background about how you started your journey, how you started in this.
Wow, my journey was a long, long one because I was a bit of a turtle. It's in life, it was very much one step forward and two steps back a lot of the
Hmm.
time. But I think back in 2007, 2008, that's when it really started for me. Although that's a lie, because as a kid, I also had my guide with me and I knew of her. I understood that she was my guide because there was like at night during my astral travels, I could see there was a silver cord. It's very strange at that time, but I do remember that vividly. But then, when you grow up, you kind of forget that and it gets tucked
Hmm.
away because life takes over. And so, probably in 2007, 2008, when I had my life threatened, and I was in a very traumatic situation with my ex, who was a part time crack addict, something I did not know. So I was
Mm,
swept into into the world of drugs, and
right.
it was frightening for me. It was really frightening for me. But from that point on, and I went to see a counselor in the UK, and the woman said, "Well, Brigitte, you're strong enough. You'll be fine." Well, that wasn't helping me. So, um, and I started to do my own research because I had taken a whole box of, well, Nurofen, which is like ibuprofen, and
Mhm.
I just wanted to be done with life. But instead, I got a good night's sleep, and the headache was gone the next day. So anyhow, yes, I was looking online, and then I found a Reiki healer, and I went to see her, and that did me the world of good. And then I rolled into Reiki because I really wanted to learn it. And in those days, as you know, Martine, it was different because when you started a course, it wasn't done in the space of a weekend, where you do level 1 and 2. You had
Right.
to do your case studies, your self-healing. So level 1 and 2 took me about 1.5 years. But then I also studied drug and alcohol abuse because I wanted to understand the mind of addicts.
Hmm.
But Reiki was actually my saving grace. And I learned a lot. And with Reiki, you pick up so much when you heal another. When you're the conduit for another person, and you help heal them.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that was the beginning. Um, and I studied many, many other healing modalities after that. EFT, which I love, the emotional freedom technique, because it's
Hmm.
so simple, yet it is so profound. It's so easy because all you do is tap out the emotions, and it really, really works.
Yeah.
And sometimes people, and you may find this yourself, sometimes with people, when they find that healing is easy, they're like, nah, this can't be true. But it
It's
actually
too
is.
good to be too easy, right?
Yeah, it's too easy. So yeah, I studied EFT, relaxation therapy, aromatherapy. I did aroma touch with doTERRA, and I love doTERRA oils, but I also love the aroma touch. Yeah, so, and I also taught Reiki at some stage, and did a lot of other workshops in meditative art, which is something that I really loved. So it's like giving a guided meditation because I'm also a meditation teacher.
How do
And
do you still practice Reiki right now?
I don't. I work with my sound bowls now.
Me too. I love sound bowls.
Yes, they're amazing. I love them because they speak so directly to the soul. And do you know, the thing with sound bowls is, and I don't know if you have that as well, it initiates light language. It makes it so much easier because of the tones.
That's interesting. So you're speaking of light language, right? Because that is one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about.
Yeah.
What led you to um, channeling, to communicating with the other side?
Channeling. Yeah. So I was in such a dire situation. I felt locked in my own home because he lived 2 doors down. He moved from like an hour away. Had my keys. I refused to return them. Depended on me financially because he just couldn't figure out his life. He fell into a deep, deep depression. But, I allowed that in my energy field, and I fell into this fight or flight syndrome because I was working my socks off, um, paying my own bills, uh,
Right,
and then trying to pay his bills as well, and sometimes
right.
getting in food. And it took its toll on me because I just couldn't do it anymore. And there were times that I was lying on the floor in my own house with the lights off and I was screaming at spirit, and then God, and I'm like, well, I can't do this anymore. And I was really at the end. And so my sister, I'm not in touch with her anymore, but she told me about Kambo. And Kambo is, it's a
Is
shamanic
it the
healer.
plant medicine?
Yeah, the plant medicine. So
Hmm.
it's not ayahuasca, but it's Kambo is the monkey tree frog,
Yeah,
where they
I've
scrape.
heard of it.
Yeah, so they scrape the poison from from the monkey tree frog, and then they how do you say that in English? So on my leg, they took the top. It's like they burn the skin, the top layer of your skin. They put 3 points on it, or 4 points,
Okay.
um, and then they put the Kambo secretion on top of that.
Yeah.
And that is a very, very, very physical healing. And that's something that I needed at that point in time. And I had no idea what to expect, because you know what? When I go in for any healing,
Yeah.
I don't want to know what happens, because you go in without any expectations,
Yeah.
right? So he did ask me you had to set an intention. You always do with Kambo. But I was purging, and it came out everywhere.
Oh my
Because
God.
that's
Like
what it does.
literally throwing up, right?
Throwing up into this big yellow bucket, right? And I had to run to the toilet because it came out always. And I was just like, oh my gosh. And the shaman, because he was so used to it, so
Hmm.
he came with me and he left me on the toilet, and then I went back, and then 2 minutes later is the same thing. Everything just came out.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was very, very powerful. I mean, you really feel it inside out. It's like your insides get washed. It's like going through a car wash. Um, so that was amazing, and I
So,
felt
but
so much.
energetically, what did it do to you?
Oh, it really, really helped me. I mean, I was so much clearer in my head. And what I did is I made a bucket list. That's spirit one day. And it was only maybe 2 or 3 weeks later where there was a fair at First Unity in St. Pete. And I mean, I had the flyer, and they were like, Birgitta, you have to go. I was like, no, Birgitta, you're going to go to the fair, And so they kind of kicked me out the house, and I went, and, I was browsing around at that fair. And so I found someone who was a divine channel. And for some reason I was, pulled towards her. So when it was my turn, I plopped down on the chair, and her name was Alania Starhawk, and she actually became my mentor for several years. And so she walked me through the Akashic Akashic Hall of Records, through some of my past lives. And so this was only a very short session. It was like 20 minutes. But I decided, you know what, I want to make an appointment with her because I loved her energy. And there was just something to it. So I did. And I went because of, well, he was my ex, even though he was still, he didn't think he was my ex. But yeah, that's really funny. But so, and I understood, because she didn't know what happened to me, because I also suffered from something. They thought it was symptoms of IBS, but I lost so much weight. I was literally, Martine, skin over bones. And I couldn't eat. I couldn't eat for probably about 6 months, because sometimes we allow the energy of another person to engulf us, and this is how it came out. I couldn't even drink a cup of tea.
Oh, wow.
It would just come out. I couldn't. I could just about stomach, mangoes, but no yogurt, nothing. I lost so much weight. It was horrific the way I looked. And you know what? This was not intentional starving, because I used to starve myself ever since I was a kid. And that's because of everything I went through. And that was the only way I could always take it out of myself, by starving myself. Not a good look. Not a good look. So I went to see her, and it was so, so interesting, because I went back to the Midwest, and I was working, and I to this day, I can see myself. I just don't know exactly what I did, even though I can see all the little drawers in the shelving cabinet. But then she had a course, and a channeling course. And so I thought, yeah, I must do this. I really, really want to do this. So I had several sessions with her, because, it takes time to heal karmic stuff from various lifetimes. And so I went to this, her workshop, and everybody was sitting in a circle. Well, I'm not the most social butterfly in the world. So I sat in a corner. I really sat in a corner. And, I was just listening. And so she did a meditation and guided us through it. Well, at 1, 2, 3, I was gone. I don't even know where I went. And then when she counted back from 3, 2, 1, that's when I was back in the room. And everyone was like, oh, yeah, we've seen the many masters. I've seen the archangels. I've seen my totem animals, the colors. And I was here and I saw this person. And I'm thinking, crap, I didn't see anything. So I was really upset, right?
Right.
And I was sitting there in the corner crying, and I was, wiping my tears at my nose with the sleeve of my vest, and I didn't say anything. And then she was talking about an exercise that she did, where she had her notepad and her pen, and she sat down, and she said to Spirit, she's like, I'm ready to receive. So something so simple. And I thought that exercise stuck in my head. So when I went home, I had my dinner, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to give this a try. I did. And I just let the words flow. And it was like old prose. And it was just amazing. And I was really crying, at home, because I thought, wow, finally I'm good at something. And because even when Reiki, sometimes I used to pick things up, or even with my card readings, I'd pick things up, but it's not like I would see I was very, very visual.
Right.
And so I went back to her, and I showed it to her, and she's like, well, you see, Birgitta, all you needed was for me to unblock your channeling to let it flow again. And I looked at Alania, and I'm like, yeah, but I've never channeled before. She looked at me, and she's like, well, what you've actually channeled is amazing. And, I started to do it every single day, because it's like riding a bike, you have to practice. And from that point, I kind of never looked back. I kept improving. And I would do, I would sometimes pick a card and it'd be like one of the archangels. And I would say, okay, have you got a message for me? Or it'd be like one of the ascended masters. I used to
Mhm.
use Doreen Virtues cards. It'd be one of the ascended masters. And then I just channel them. And then it rolled into very much, I love Saint Germain. And that has to do something that I never knew, because my dad was a Rosicrucian before he crossed over.
Okay,
And
what is that?
so Rosicrucians, which I didn't know either. I had to do my research on
Hmm.
that. But it's working with Saint Germain. Rosicrucians are alchemists.
Okay.
So it's transforming that lead into gold. Well, that's the physical essence, but the mental is really about transforming the lead, the heaviness of yourself, of your experiences, into gold. Into a
Into the
far more,
light.
into the light, and becoming a far more enlightened and authentic version of yourself. So it's really amazing. And Katumi, and we talk about Rosicrucians, and Nikola Tesla was one, Einstein, Abraham Lincoln,
Okay.
Franklin D. Roosevelt. So that was, I was just blown away. And I mean, even it stems from as far back as ancient Egypt, because that's where I was. So it's the mystery schools.
I feel like I just got when you were talking about it, because I feel like that may be the same thing as a Freemason here in the States. Do you know about Freemasons?
Yeah, no, that's different.
That's different? Okay.
Yeah, it's different.
Okay.
It's similar, but it's not. It's not this. Every teaching has something. Well, they
Different.
all have. Yeah, they're different, but they also. I'm not sure who was a Freemason though, but the fundamentals of many of the ancient teachings carry the same thing.
Okay.
It's really all about returning to your authentic nature. Actually, someone that my mom knew, he was what do you call that? I think a lodge, a grand lodge, or the head of one of the Freemason
Okay.
lodges.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because I
but
it came to me because my dad was a Freemason as well. He passed away
yeah,
some time ago. So it
um,
kind of
yeah,
the way you were describing them reminded me of the
yeah.
Freemasons. Yeah.
It's similar. It's similar. Yeah,
Hmm.
um, and so it was really about transformation. So it was, transformation. And my dad thought he could cure himself, but he had so many issues stemming from his youth and also the abuse that he suffered. And
Hmm.
same in my mother's line, there was a lot of abuse, and that's the ancestral lineage. It goes from often it goes from generation to generation to
Yes, it
generation,
does.
unless you cut that cords and you heal that.
Hmm.
And people always say, well, it's in my DNA. Well, that's the easiest cop out, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you suffer from something. But yeah. So I stopped that. My mom stopped it in her line, and I stopped it. And your ancestors get freed as well. But yeah, so with Saint Germain, I work a lot with Saint Germain,
Okay.
and so when I read up on the Rosicrucians, it was like the penny dropped. It really dropped. Oh
Hmm.
well, now I understand why I channeled Saint Germain and Katumi. Katumi not so much, but all the galactics. The galactics came later, um, but I have an affinity with the Anunnaki. I love them. I really, really love them, especially because they are the creators of mankind.
Yes.
And even though they are, they, well, they created mankind, but then also the others, like the Pleiadians, the Arcturians, they also created parts of mankind. That's why we're so eclectic. We're all different strands of DNA.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing. I think it's amazing. I think the earth is such a beautiful place with so many different um, um, many different races, so to speak. But people forget that we're all star seeds, right? We're all
Mhm.
brothers and sisters of the light. But yeah, it's I just find it incredible.
So when
So
you started channeling,
yeah.
what was confirmation for you that you were communicating with this particular being?
So how I did it was like I would not look up anything about them, and then I would channel. Then after I channeled, I would look things up, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this makes total sense."
Mm,
And that's the way to do it, rather than the other way around. When you do your research first and then channel, because that influences you.
yes.
Um, so that's how I used to that's how I used to practice, because there would be people in there like I had no idea who they were. Um, and so once I got, so I have a whole array where I have journals that of different masters that I channeled, and different deities, which really, really helped me. But now, as I said, now I really work more with Saint Germain, even Archangel Michael, the Ascended Master taught, and I got very much into um, the sacred geometrical grid, because it's very funny, because we are all sacred geometrical designs within the grid of the multiverse. And so people often think that we're just this blob, this organism, but we're not. I mean, yes, we're the light within, but we've been created a certain way.
Now you spoke about healing your line, and your mom healing,
Yeah.
you know her lineage and stuff like that. How does one go about cutting those cords and doing that ancestral healing so that you can connect with your higher self or your higher purpose?
So for my mom was very, very strict. And that's that conditioning where it goes from generation to generation.
Yes.
So we would get spanked, and my sister, oh, she got it a bit worse than me. And even the belt was used. And my mom apologized many years later, and to my sister actually. Um, and I understood. It's one of these things where people often don't forgive, right? Because they carry that with them.
Yes.
Even when people apologize, for their behavior. My sister carried that with her, and she has remained carrying that with her. But that is her choice. There's no right or wrong in how you choose to experience life.
Mm-hmm.
See, that was a shift in mindset from my mom, just like it was a shift in my mind, a shift in my mind, because I wanted to heal. I didn't want to go. I was tired. I'm
Right.
tired of the same experiences,
Yeah, you can't keep holding on to that
No,
stuff.
no, you have to take responsibility for your life.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the thing. People often, and it's often subconscious, they remain in that victim mentality, right? That consciousness, they remain in that. And you have to just think, you know what, I don't want this anymore. I want change. I want a different life, So you have to look within. And that was the catalyst for change within me. And that's why I started with Reiki. And it doesn't go overnight. As well as I do, Martine, healing
Right.
doesn't go overnight, because if that were the case, oh well, why are we here?
And it's a constant. It's not
Yes.
like it's a lifestyle change,
Yes.
basically.
It's like you have to reprogram yourself. It's
Mm-hmm.
like you have
Mm-hmm.
to you have to decondition yourself, because we're so conditioned. We have all these labels slapped, within our mind, that we associate with our experiences. And it's very much about alchemizing your experiences and healing and moving forward.
Yeah.
And so that's that. I call it I was battling my ego for the longest time, because the ego wanted to be in the driver's seat. and was always screaming at me. But now it's like, I don't, it's very strange because I don't have that fear label anymore or that shame label. And it's the one thing where I used to even be scared of speaking up, right? Speaking up and speaking my truth. Now I don't have any issues with it. But if you knew me like 10 years ago,
Right.
I'd be hiding somewhere behind a door.
Yeah. So what would you tell someone who is going through that, who is going through like victimhood, and how what would be the first step to them healing that, them healing?
So when you're really trapped in a victim consciousness, it's like you know, you have to take responsibility. So that's always what I will tell people. You have to take responsibility for your life.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's when the healing journey starts. Now, I always say to people, you have to do what you feel comfortable with. If that's counseling, then that's okay. If you want to go the holistic route, which is far quicker,
Right.
often far quicker, um, that's the way to go. And I always say to people, it's either light language, because light language comes from the galactics and it speaks directly to your soul. Even if you do not understand the language, it doesn't matter because your soul understands it. And it's amazing what gets released. But I had to go, like for me, I had to understand the different healing modalities because it was one step at a time for me. You know, if somebody would have come with me about, come to me and told me about light language, I would have said, "Yeah, I'm not so sure about that," and that's
Yeah.
why,
That's
and
how
that's
I
okay.
felt too. I know a few people who who do that, who do light language, and they put out transmissions all the time. And I at first I when I was listening, I really didn't connect.
Hmm.
It's not that I was like, "Oh, this is crazy, this is bullshit," or anything like that. It just I don't know. I could my mind was still trying to hear I was still trying to hear it with my mind.
Yeah.
And
Yes, that's what we
so that
do, right?
yes, and that's why I know that I wasn't connecting. So I said I'm going to leave this alone and maybe come back to it.
Yeah.
And you know, I still don't understand, but because I feel like I need to know what this person is speaking over my life. You know what I mean? I need to know what they're
Yes.
saying. Like if you're speaking something over me, I need to know what you're saying. You know what I mean? Do I want this in my field? So that's what I was feeling, and I couldn't stop trying to hear it with my mind.
Yeah. Yes.
So
Yes. Yes, that was in the beginning for me too. Uh, but here's the thing. So most of the transmissions that people put out there, I don't listen to because I'm very, very picky. So it's the same for meditations. Especially the breathing exercises, and I like working with Lord Sananda, who, his former aspect was Jesus Christ. And he always hammers on me about breath work. You have to breathe properly. You really do, to recenter yourself. Because
mhm.
most people just breathe up to here, but really you have to breathe all the way to your root chakra and then all the way back up.
Uh-huh.
But I really like to listen to 432 hertz guided meditations because they're just so universal. They just balance me and recenter me, and it takes away all this, well, the stress from every day, so to speak. And it's really, really powerful.
What is that frequency? Is that the love
For
frequency?
No, 432 hertz is really about
Releasing.
releasing any stress and recentering yourself. I
Okay.
love it because it's just it's very it calms me right down. That's really what it does.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's very universal. When I do that on my breathing exercises, yeah, I sometimes go places. So it's kind of nice.
So your breathing exercise is just an example. So you were saying we need to breathe from the root all the way up through the crown, right?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
And when you start, it's difficult because you're not used to it, right? And it's like I do it for like half an hour in the morning and often half an hour at night. But sometimes it's really strange because it's like 1.5 hours will have passed and it's like, how did that go? Time you don't realize it. You
Yeah.
don't realize it. It's not like when you have a guided meditation, right? And it takes half an hour. That's it. Start and finish. You'll know. So
Mm.
this is different. This is really focusing on your breath and doing the work.
The way that I breathe when I try to at the end of the at night, I try to have a little bit of meditation,
Yeah.
if maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes,
Yeah.
but I breathe, in through my nose and I fill
Yes,
my belly,
exactly.
and
Hmm.
then I exhale. But when I breathe in, when I go all the way up, my crown just like feels like tingly. So I
That makes
feel
sense.
like that, huh?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and I feel that's when I know I'm like, okay, that's good. That's supposed to happen.
Yes.
And then I exhale it all out. But I try to breathe like that a few times a day,
Good.
just to be mindful.
Yes.
And because sometimes we forget to breathe, which is weird. Like we're so like stressed and we're so tight and our shoulders are like
Yeah.
this, and I'm like, okay, relax and do
Yeah.
some and breathe in and out.
That's an important point you make about being mindful.
Mhm.
Mindful, right?
Yeah.
Either your mind is full or you are mindful. Um, and people often forget, right? Because we run around like loonies, trying to
Yes.
make a living, having to pay the bills because
Hmm.
that's how the world was designed. Our soul was not designed to live that way, but this is about how the world was designed. But we're slowly inching away from that because
Yeah.
everything is just collapsing, which I think is amazing. So yeah, but yeah, people just need to learn to be more mindful. And when you start to become more mindful and more aware, then you make different choices.
Yes. Because you have more clarity.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So about the light, getting back
Yes.
to the light language, because I'm so intrigued by it. Um, how does light language actually heal? You said something about
Yeah.
it's speaking to our souls. How does that
Yeah.
heal us?
So it's very, I have a very amazing, amazing friend called Louise Rhodes, and she moved up to Wales in the UK. And when I went to see her, it was virtually. She helped me so much. It was like I could just close my eyes and I could just feel the light language. She works a lot with the Arturians, even the Mantis, and I could just feel it. I could just feel it. And I had issues with my knee, um, and sometimes my back would be rigid or I pulled a muscle. And the minute she started doing that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it speaks to your soul. So when you see it online, when they do transmissions, that I cannot always relate to because it really has to speak directly to my soul. So when I have a personal session, what happened with her was it was gone. The pain was just gone. She had removed it because there were some galactic lives that needed to be resolved. I had died in for instance, in battle. I was captured in battle, and I was tortured, and
Mm-hmm.
they kept me. It's very I can't even. They kept me suspended in midair with these iron rods. They weren't attached to my body, but they would electrocute me.
Right.
And so she removed that, and it's amazing what happens. It's gone. That's how powerful it is. So
Hmm.
every time I have something, I know my guides tell me, Birgitta, just call her, and boom, it's gone.
That is super interesting. I love that. I love that.
Yeah, it's she is really she's phenomenal.
I
She
guess I
really
just
is.
have to come across when it's my time. I just
Yes,
have to come across the perfect, or, the ideal, not perfect, but the ideal light language for me.
yes,
You know what I mean?
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And at some stage you'll be drawn to someone that speaks to you.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Right. Right.
I
So
mean,
let's talk about your book.
oh yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
that's out now,
yes,
Becoming Authentically Me. So tell us
yes.
about your book.
So becoming authentically me, and it's written a little differently, as you know, because it's written as BE-COM-ING,
Mm-hmm.
and the title was given to me by the Council of Ra, so the Egyptian deities, and it's actually when you rearrange the letters, it becomes being.com. And .com is, yes, I know it's from Latin,
Oh,
it's
okay.
root, but it's .com also is it's like the worldly suffix for a domain. So being.com is being completely yourself within the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Rather than the mask persona that we have become because of the the worldly conditioning. But yeah, so I started writing this about 22 years ago in the year 2000. So when I was still young, and I stopped writing for a while because life took over,
Yeah.
and then I started a few years ago. They told me, you need to finish writing the book. And I'm like, yeah, well, that's great. And so I did. I sat down, and it just started to flow. And so the first part was not meant to be in the book, but they were like, Birgitta, you're going to write it, and people are going to read it. I'm like, yeah, but then it becomes such a big book. Birgitta, it's fine. It's two books in one. So the first part is really about um, the shifting consciousness and the transformational times that we find ourselves in, and everything that has been happening. And yeah, so I talk about that, and I talk about the beginnings of the earth. I discuss the Anunnaki. I discuss even that I was a hybrid Anunnaki because I was a giant of a man. And it's very funny to see because I'm like, I looked at my feet and I'm like, yeah, but my feet are funny. It's like platypus feet. Well, Birgitta, we hadn't figured it out, but we hadn't quite figured it out. Um, so it was I mean, the times back then, I mean, even Atlantis were so amazing. You can't even compare it. You can't even compare ancient Egypt to today.
Right.
It was so different, and there were spacecraft and people were at a different frequency. So now we live in the third dimension, and there's a veil in front of us, even though the veil is slowly lifting now. I'm like, oh my God, I look at the planes today. To me, that's dinosaur mode. I look at the cars, that's like dinosaur vehicles, like Fred Flintstone. But yes, so I talk about the fact that there is no death, because there isn't. There really is only transformation. We're energy. We cannot die. It's just this it's just this word that we've created, and it's in the human dictionary.
Right.
But instead, as you know, Martin, we should celebrate that soul rather than
Yep. Yeah.
grieving. I understand that now. I didn't understand that when I was a kid, when my dad
Right.
crossed over. That was horrific for me. But yeah, so I talk about duality, and then I go into my life. The second part is talking about my life, and everything that I've been through. and how I vanquished my demons. And it's all infused with exercises. There's even an exercise with for EFT with the violet flame.
Okay.
Very, very simple, but yeah, so it's infused with all the channelings from the many, many masters, giving you advice on how to live your life. And it's often I poke fun at myself, because I don't really care. I mean, I'm only here temporary, right? And
Mm-hmm.
people often say to me, "Yeah, how can you talk about yourself like that?" Because it doesn't. I'm not really. It doesn't really bother me. I've all my experiences I've alchemized, and it doesn't
Right.
mean that I'm not going to go through crap again. Oh, I'm sure, I'll get something else thrown my way. Just is no point. I mean, I used to huff and puff at about everything when something went wrong, even though I soldiered on. But I would always think, well, why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to me?
Yeah.
Well, and they were like, well,
That's
Birgitta, you're
yeah.
not learning.
That's the position that I would take too a lot of times, because I think for a long time in my life, I always had the understanding that everything was like a lesson. There was always
Yeah,
something to be learned in every situation. So even as a kid, when things would happen, I remember always asking, okay, so what am I supposed to learn from this? Because, and I would always say that in my head. And back then I didn't realize that I was so connected to spirit. I really
yeah,
didn't know.
mm,
And as it turns out, I've always been connected and in tune, but I thought it was normal for me. Like I would hear spirit, and I would have this strong intuition, and I would have all of the feelings.
yeah,
My dreams were crazy, um but I thought that was all normal, like that was just who I was. But I
yeah,
always remembered saying to myself when things would happen, things, bad things or things that I really didn't like, and I would always say, what am I supposed to learn from this? What am I supposed to learn from this?
mm,
And
yeah,
that's always the position I feel like that I've taken throughout my whole life, is like whenever things happen, I try to look for the lesson
yeah,
or in it. If I don't, then I rather do that than be like, oh God, why is this happening? You know what I mean? Because
yeah.
if you just take the different position, you'll see the difference in your reaction.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's a
absolutely.
big, huge difference in your reaction and how you deal with things. Once are you going to be the victim, or you're
Yeah.
going to be like, okay, what can I learn from this?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So where can we find your book?
Yep.
Because I am going to purchase it.
Yeah, it's on Amazon.
Okay.
It's on Amazon. So you can get it either Kindle or paperback.
Okay. Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah.
And what about if someone wanted to um contact you for your services, for what you
Yeah.
do in any healing work?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I mean, I do my readings. I'm waiting on one more bowl to come, but I just got another bowl from Nepal, and the sound is like out of this world because
Mhm.
it's the cosmic heart. So um, I call it it's an alchemy bowl, um, but it's just the sound is just so clear. It's amazing. So you have the frosted crystal ones,
Yes,
and this
that's
is
the ones that I have, the frosted
yeah.
crystal.
This I have one of the frosted crystals as well, but this is clear. So one is green that I have, and one is magenta, and the one that I'm getting is for the throat, and that's blue, and that's currently it was being made. It's currently being sent to me.
Okay. I've seen those online. I've seen the alchemy bowls,
Yeah,
and I always wondered about them because I didn't know the tone. because I imagine it's different than the crystal ones. So if
Yeah.
someone is listening who wants to tap into, their gifts and start channeling and things, of what would be a tip that you would, give to them?
That you use the tip I gave you. Well,
okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine. So, I mean, the tip, as I said, if you really want to learn to channel, I mean, for everyone it works different. But for me, like I said, the catalyst was really, um, the catalyst was really, oh, yeah. The catalyst for me was to sit down and say to spirit, I'm ready to receive. And I was ready to receive. And where I use like the cards, I use the cards, or I use the word, whether it was divine or inspiration, or whether it was like Archangel Michael, and I would sit in the energy and just write whatever I got. But it's learning to put your mind to the side, because we often like to use our mind, but it's putting that aside. And sometimes, if you want to listen to any meditation, then go right ahead. If that calms you down, if that centers you, then do that. For everyone it works different. But this, like I said, this worked for me, where I sat down and I said, Spirit, I'm ready to receive.
Perfect. So I really enjoyed our conversation, Birgitta. Thank you we've been talking for like an hour already.
Yeah, it's okay.
And I said 30 minutes.
I know. This is what happens, right?
I said 30 minutes and I look at the time and it's like, oh my God, an hour and 2 minutes
It's
already.
fine.
Okay, so everyone, I'm going to have Birgitta's information in the description box if you are watching this on YouTube, or if you're listening to this on the podcasting platforms. I want to thank you all for watching and listening, and I will see you next time for another episode. Everyone, take care. Bye.
Thanks, Martine.
You're welcome.